Morning. We're continuing on with the book, How to Eat Fried Worms, and now we're on the fourth worm. Billy ate steadily, grimacing, rubbing his nose, spreading on more horseradish sauce. Tom bent over him, hissing in his ear. Fish, 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 fish. Billy paused, watching Alan and Joe whispering by the door. He swished the last bite around and around in the ketchup and mustard. All of a sudden he said, "That's not fair. They can't act like that anymore. Every time I swallow, they lean forward as if they expect me to keel over or something. And then when I don't, they look surprised and shrug their shoulders and nudge each other." "Come on," said Joe. "Cut it out. We can watch you for Christ's sake. We're just standing over here by the window watching you." "No, you're not," said Billy. "You're whispering and acting as if you expected something to happen every time I swallow." "It's nothing," said Joe. "Forget it. Look. We'll turn around and you look out the window while you swallow." "What do you mean it's nothing?" said Billy. "What's nothing?" "Oh, come on," said Alan. "It's just something Joe's father told him the other night. It's nothing." "What? What?" "It'll just worry you," said Alan. "It's crazy. It's nothing. Forget it." Billy tore the napkin away from his throat. "Tell me." "It's nothing," said Joe. "You know how my father is. He's always yelling about something. Tell me or it's all off." "Well, look, it's nothing, but the night before last, I was telling Janie about you eating the worms, and my father was on the porch and heard us. So he threw down his newspaper and said, 'Joseph.' So I said, 'Yes, Pa?' And he says, 'Have you eaten a worm, Joseph?' And then he grabbed my shoulders and shook till my hands danced at the ends of my arms, like a puppet's. 'It's for your own good,' he says. So I started, 'It's not going to do me any good if I shake pieces, is it?' Janie was wailing. My mother was chewing her apron in the doorway. 'Alfred,' she cries, 'what's he done?' 'You'll break him.' 'Has he hauled down the American flag at school and eaten it again? Has he?' 'So what's the point?' yelled Billy. 'Get to the point. What's it all have to do with me?' 'I'm coming to it,' said Joe, wiping his nose. 'But I wanted to show you how important it was. My father nearly killing me and all.' He sneezed, and then Alan began to sneeze, and finally had to hobble off onto one of the horse stalls, hugging his stomach to recover. "Anyway," said Joe, wiping his nose again and hitching up his Levi's, his pants. "So my father told my mother he thought I'd eaten a worm." "A what?" says my mother, dropping her apron and clutching the sides of her head. "A worm," says my father, nodding solemnly. So my mother fainted, collapsed all helter-skelter right there in the doorway, and lay still, her tongue lolling out of her mouth, her red hair spread out beautifully over the doorsill. "Will you cut it out?" Billy yelled. "Who cares about your mother? What does it have to do with me?" "I think he's lying," said Tom. "Who ever heard of someone's mother fainting and her tongue hanging out?" "All right," yelled Joe apologetically, stamping around. "All right, now I won't tell you. You can die, Billy Forrester, and you'll have to carry him home, Tom Grout, all by yourself. Nobody says to me, 'Who cares about your mother?' All right. I'm going, Alan," he yelled. "They're insulting my mother. I'm going." "Don't," said Alan, running out of the horse stall and grabbing Joe by the shirt tail. "Don't. You got to tell him. Even your mother had said so. Mine too. No matter what he said, ain't it a matter of life and death?" "I won't," said Joe, starting toward the door. Alan pulled him back. "You got to. How long have we known poor Bill? 6, 7 years? For old time's sake, Joe, because we were all once in kindergarten together. Think of the agony he faced, Joe. The pain and the blood and the gore." Billy was on his knees by the orange crate, wringing his hands, not daring to interfere. But when Joe glanced sullenly back at him, he whispered, "Please, Joe, for old time's sake." "Well, will you apologize for insulting my mother?" "I do," said Billy. "I do apologize." There you can see him apologizing. So Alan and Joe began to sneeze again, and this time had to bend over and put their heads between their legs to recover. Tom, who had been watching them suspiciously, trying to make out what was going on, started to say something. "Shut up," said Billy fiercely, turning on him. "You keep out of it." So Joe went on with his story, how his mother had been carried upstairs to her room, how the doctor had come, shaking his head, how his aunt had sobbed, pulling down all the shades in their house, how that morning his mother had finally come downstairs for the first time, leaning on his aunt's arm, pale and sorrowful, how... "Yeah," said Tom, "sure, so why? What does eating worms do to you?" Nobody would tell me, said Joe, opening his eyes wide. It's been 3 days now, and nobody'll say. Just like the time my cousin Lucy got caught in the back seat of her father's Chevrolet with an encyclopedia salesman. Nobody'll tell me why there was such an uproar. He wiped his mouth. But one thing's sure, it's worse than poison. Probably. Nuts, said Tom. Oh, yeah, said Joe. Then he and Ellen had another sneezing fit, sprawling helplessly against each other. It's like they're falling all over each other. Look at them, said Tom to Billy. They're not sneezing. They're laughing. Come on, eat the last piece and let's get out of here. You really think so? Said Billy doubtfully. The sneezing did look an awful lot like giggling. Sure. Look at them. Tom gave Alan and Joe a shove. They collapsed in a heap, sneezing uncomfortably. Billy watched them. Yeah, sure, they weren't sneezing. They were laughing, weren't they? Hay fever, gasped Alan. Hay fever? Ah, you never had hay fever before, said Tom. How about yesterday or the day before? Come on, Billy, open up. So Billy, half believing Tom and half not, glancing doubtfully at Alan and Joe, allowed Tom to poke the last bite of worm into his mouth and lead him out of the barn. Alan and Joe sat up. Didn't work, said Alan. Joe began to brush the chaff out of his hair. That's the little bits of straw that would have been stuck in his hair. You wait. He wasn't sure. Tom was, but he isn't eating the worms. You wait. Billy's worried. He was before. That's why he said he felt like he was going to throw up. But now he's really worried. Suppose I wasn't lying. Did you see his face when I said my father shook me? I thought his eyes would bug right out of his head. Alan laughed. Oh, geez, yeah. And when you said your mother fainted? Joe stopped brushing the chaff out of his hair. Except why'd you laugh so much, for Christ's sake? If you'd kept a straight face, even Tom wouldn't have guessed. You laughed first. What do you mean? Me? I laughed first? I did not. You did so. You laughed when he yelled at you the first time. You wiped your nose. They went off through the meadow arguing. Chapter 11, Tom. Billy pushed the frying pan toward Tom. Okay, think. Looks like a liar. It's not supposed to hurt you. You eat a piece. Oh, no, said Alan. He and Joe were lying on their stomachs in the hayloft watching. If he eats a piece, you lose, Billy. Bet was you were going to eat 15 worms, not you and him together. Billy didn't look up, his eyes fixed grimly on Tom. All right, then I'll go dig another worm, just for him. He's so big, telling me, hurry up, hurry up. I can't wait around all day. Don't be a sissy. All right now. I didn't say sissy, said Tom uncomfortably. I just said if the first 4 worms didn't kill you, this one wouldn't. I can't help it if my mother told me to be home by 2 today. She's going shopping, so I have to mind my brother. Yeah, said Billy. Okay, so we'll just have time for you to eat a worm before you go. Come on, where's the shovel? Here, said Alan from the loft. We brung an extra today. A worm dangled, squirming from his fingers. He dropped it to Billy. It's not cooked, said Tom. It'll do, said Joe, climbing down the ladder. He took the worm from Billy and ran out and ran back and grabbed the frying pan. Tom sat down on an overturned pail to wait. He didn't want to eat any worm. It wasn't his bet. He glanced at the door creaking in the wind. Maybe he should make a break for it. Of course, he could see Billy's point. Billy didn't believe Joe's story, but still, he'd find it reassuring if Tom ate some worm too. He'll eat it, Billy said to Alan. If he don't, he's chicken, said Alan, after all his talk. Why don't I eat it? Thought Tom. I mean, it's a yucky thing to do, but it wouldn't kill me. He scratched his neck, shifting his seat on the pail. I don't know, thought Tom. I just won't, I guess. He gagged, imagining what it'd be like to bite down on a soft, fat, boiled worm. He glanced at the door again. Billy kicked the door shut. Leave it open, said Tom. Why? Because I said so. Yeah, well, you don't own this barn. Neither do you. Your father does. Billy rubbed his nose, watching Tom, figuring. He's trying to pick a fight so he won't have to eat the worm. Okay. Billy opened the door and set a brick against it. Tom shifted his seat on the pail again. Couldn't stop thinking about what it'd be like to bite down on a soft, fat, boiled worm. He scratched his ear. Who did Billy think he was, trying to order people around, telling them what they had to eat and all? Billy wasn't anybody's father. Tom began to feel put upon, and indignant and stubborn. The screen door slammed. Joe came back with the worm. Tom licked his lips. He heard Joe running across the barnyard toward them. Billy! Alan shouted. Billy spun around just in time to catch a glimpse of Tom pelting out the door banging shut. He flung to the window. Joe sprawled in the middle of the barnyard on his back. Tom was clambering up over the wall into the meadow. The frying pan lay upside down beside the horse trough. See what happens next.